So I met Mark Hernandez at the first Worlds that I qualified for when I was on the team with Mark Justice, Pete Leiher from the same top eight, and Hank Stern. And Mark was the French national champion, terrific person, really one of my favorite people I met at Worlds that year, turned into a lifelong friend. He's actually a top video game designer. He was one of the guys who led Splinter Cell, one of the recent Splinter Cells. But anyways, Mark was a really, really bright deck designer. And so he actually came out and stayed with me the whole summer before the second Worlds, the Turbostasis Worlds, the Worlds I qualified for with Turbostasis, that Matt Place and I were on the same team with. And he actually came out and stayed with me in Virginia the entire summer. And we invented Storm Drain at the time. And I provided you with a deck list for Storm Drain, so you can, you actually did create a representation, so you can show that in post. But Storm Drain is basically like, it's like the first version of Bloom Drain, where you kind of fast bond sort of in a weird way replaces your squandered resources. And then the Storm Cauldron is a 5 casting cost artifact that makes it so, I think it makes it so you can lay an extra land that turn. I'm not sure, I'd have to look it up. But the main thing it does is makes it so every time you tap a land, it returns to your hand. And with Fast Bond, you could keep playing that land again and again and again and again. And then we had Lake of the Dead that could give us a big, additional burst of mana if we needed it to, especially to cast Storm Cauldron. We were using Necro as an engine as a card drawing engine. And I just obliterated people at Worlds with this. It was a tough Worlds because Matt and I, our teammates, George Baxter, who now runs a hedge fund, and George is bright, by the way, very bright, one of the brightest in Magic, and Dennis Bentley really just had the worst Worlds that year. I don't know what happened to them, but they just had terrible records, and so it was really all on me and Matt. And not all, but I mean, they really had a rough Worlds. And so Matt was actually the #1 seed, and I wound up taking top 16. The big reason why I was able to make top 16 was this Storm Drain deck. I went, I think, 5-0-1 with it, and my loss was a draw, which I'll admit I kind of invented the intentionally draw rule out of kind of a bit out of nowhere, because it just would have been horrible to play Mark and to beat him after that summer and everything. And so that was wrong and a terrible thing. Sorry, Magic World. We kind of made up our own intentional draw. It was actually extremely hard to play the matchup. We both had Necropotence. If we both resolved Necropotence, there was actually no way to win the first game. Mark Rosewater pointed out that we could have sideboarded in our awesome Urnam Jins and Serendipity Freaks and Jazam Jins. Oh, my T Genie. We say every time we cast a Jazam Jin. But that was a pretty bad sideboard play to cast creatures against a deck that's trying to one turn kill you. I actually literally got a 1 turn kill. This is type 1.5 when people were playing Brian Weissman and Matt Place and Dan Burdick. Dan's my playtesting partner now. He's incredible deck builder. Had Monkey May I, this Serendipity Freed, Kurt Ape, Force of Will deck that played, and they had Urnam Jins too, and they played Mana Crypt, so they could really quickly get down these threats, and then followed up with Mana Drains and Forces of Will. So they had Monkey May I, but I knew I had Storm Drain, which is such a cool deck, and I think it was better than Monkey May I. Anyways, I think I went 5-0-1 with it. And I was actually playing against somebody who was at the time the #1 seed, and he was bragging about it. Really kind of a little bit punky kid, but I'm sure he turned out to be a great adult, maybe from Finland or somewhere. It wasn't Tommy. And he was rushing me, and I was looking at my opening hand, and I was like, dude, I think you're dead. He was trying to get me to play my first line. He's like, hurry up, because he wanted to play like a Kurt Ape or something. And I was like, wait a second, I think you're dead. And he was. I think I psyched him out after that. He didn't win a game after that, but I actually literally killed him on the first turn. You just fast bond down, play fast bond and get a cauldron down, and you can pick it up, and then drain line. just need to get a little bit ahead in life with the Storm Cauldron, so you can just sack some swamps. So basically, it was the type of thing where it was very, very easy to resolve a Necropotence if you look at the deck. And then once you resolved the Necropotence, there was no way for you to actually win the mirror. So we intentionally drew. So the reason why in the mirror, Mark and I, who were the only two people playing Stormbrain because we came up with it, was, it was very highly likely to result in a draw, because if either of us resolved Necropotence, then that person who has Necropotence can't lose. They can draw, but they can't lose anymore. You can't deck them anymore because they won't draw any more cards, and they can't. If you hit them with a 20-point drain life, they just quickly drain all of their life by setting aside the top card of their library with Necropotence's ability. That's what it lets you do. And so they can just drain their life down to 0. Thus, there would be no life for you to draw back with the drain life. By the way, drain life really was always my card. I love that card. That at that Worlds, when I was playing Stormbrain, I then went 5-1 in we had this weird steel deck format. I lost to 3 nightmares. Ugh. But I had 3 Drain Life in my deck, and it was awesome. And Drain Life throughout my career is like one of my favorite cards that I had so much success with. But the problem with Drain Life, the only downside is if your opponent doesn't have life, then you don't gain any life back. And with our deck, you would go down to 0 life typically. It may have been mathematically possible. I'm sure it was mathematically possible. I'd have to run the numbers. Probably was mathematically possible to kill somebody because of Lake of the Dead. You could splash 5 land at a time and kind of get a little bit ahead with that.
Mom, I got hit with a 44-point drain life today.
Please subscribe.